This is part 2 of Full and Bloom's Inside the Album, Ozzy Osbourne, Speak of the Devil. A link to part 1 can be found in the description. Following the death of Randy Rhoads on March 19, 1982, Ozzy Osbourne quickly learned that finding a replacement guitarist was not going to be easy. "I can't do this anymore," Ozzy said. Manager Sharon replied, "We are not stopping now." Subsequent to Randy's death, drummer Tommy Aldridge stated that he felt a real loyalty and responsibility to Sharon and Ozzy. "I tried to stay around and help Ozzy out with finding another guitarist to finish the tour," Aldridge said. "It was very tough for Ozzy because Randy Rhoads and Bob Daisley put all that material together. Randy had such a huge impact on Ozzy's career. We were stuck between a rock and a hard spot because we had dates that had to be done. This is the reason I stayed. I tried to help find someone who could at least give Ozzy a chance to finish that tour and fulfill his commitments." Keyboardist Airey added, "We couldn't believe what had happened. We were like, what have we done to deserve that? It wasn't like the band was a mad bunch of party animals. Sharon kept a tight rein on everything, which I loved. It was a great band to be in. There were no drinks backstage and hardly any drinks on the bus. We were all in terrible shock, but we eventually started to try and find a replacement guitarist. What do? You have to carry on. We ended up in LA and we auditioned various people, none of which were very suitable. After canceling a select number of immediate dates, the tour was set to resume on April 1st, giving Ozzy less than 2 weeks to find a replacement. In his book, Off the Rails, bassist Rudy Sarzo said, "As soon as we started the auditions, we were confronted with a new set of depressing circumstances. Just a few days earlier, we were performing with the best musician I had ever known. And now we were in a rehearsal room filled with sadness and grief, while the endless parade of guitar hopefuls struggled to muster a mere speck of Randy's prowess. After the first day of emotionally draining and futile auditions, it occurred to me that maybe my brother Robert should come to Los Angeles and try out. I had always regarded Robert as a great musician and felt that he was more talented than any of the guitarists who had already auditioned." During a 2008 Full and Bloom interview with Robert Sarzo, the guitarist recalled the audition.
When Randy Rhoads died, I got a call from Ozzy. They knew that I played guitar, so they asked if I wanted to audition. And I was there rehearsing and auditioning, and I kept seeing people coming in and, auditioning, like, trying my best. And I knew if I had to go out there, and they needed somebody that could learn stuff just like Randy Rhoads. So I've always been a metal player, and I played fusion music, jazz rock, all kinds of stuff. So I just had to, lock myself up and think about what Randy feel like.
As soon as Robert arrived, he spent most of his time in his hotel room learning the songs and concentrating on capturing all of Randy's musical nuances. It quickly became clear to everyone, including Ozzy, that Robert was by far the best candidate for the job.
So I was there, and I got the gig. I passed the audition, so I was supposed to start the tour with them. So anyway, and then Sharon's father, Don Art, had already hired Bernie Torme. So even though I already had the gig, I was already rehearsing with Ozzy. I apologized and said, we got a problem here. They hired somebody else. Interesting enough, a couple of the nights, I was staying at Sunset Marquee, and I thought Randy came to visit me. And that was really, very bizarre. So I had the live recording of him that I had taped, from one of the radio interviews. And, he definitely was there talking to me. And,
oh, yeah? What do you mean? You saw something or what?
He was not there yet, and I didn't see him. I just felt his energy was so intense. I've been exposed to things like that in my younger years, experimenting. Yeah, he was definitely there.
Unbeknownst to everyone, including Sharon and Ozzy, Jet Records had already paid Bernie Torme in advance. As a result, the guitarist was reluctantly hired. But for Torme, the Ozzy gig was never meant to be a permanent job. Torme said, "Ozzy's record company called me. I had been on Jet Records, Don Arden's label, and I kind of knew Sharon. They asked me to go to the U.S. and help Ozzy out to finish a tour since his guitarist Randy had been tragically killed. I didn't want to do it having just left Ian Gillan. They thought, he's out of a job, he'll jump at it. But I had a solo tour starting in a matter of days and Turn Out the Lights about to come out. Big artists have a thing where it's totally incomprehensible that anyone would say no. When I was saying I have all this going on, David Arden was thinking he's probably only saying that to up his price. David offered Torme £2,000 a week and paid a week's wages in advance. The guitarist eventually agreed to step in as long as it was only for a month. When I got there, Torme continued, Sharon told me it wasn't £2,000 a week. It was $200 a week. She said, David's on drugs. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I said, but I've had $2,000 already. She said, well, then we ain't going to pay you anything until it's paid off. Not being primarily driven by financial gain, Torme found humor rather than frustration in the situation. However, other aspects of the problem were not as easily overlooked. I was out there on Thursday and Randy had died the previous Saturday. It wasn't even a week. I don't think anyone spoke to me the day I arrived, other than Don Airey. It was a really bad atmosphere, and understandably so. I suppose on some level, Tommy and Don wanted to carry on. Ozzy had no desire, and Rudy certainly hadn't. To Ozzy, Randy was the one who was key, the linchpin to Ozzy's renewed career, and also a friend. So when he was killed, Ozzy really found that hard to handle. Anyone would. He wasn't in a good way. There were a lot of tears, and he was having a difficult time health-wise with his voice. I'd come off stage, and he'd be standing in the back, crying his eyes out. It must have been very hard, but he held it together, and he was great on stage. It never showed. And for the record, Ozzy didn't drink at all on gig days. You couldn't even bring a can of beer anywhere near the dressing room. It wasn't allowed, but any day off, he was out of his face.
After I went out to play with Ozzy, I think, day 2 or day 3, we had a day off, and he phoned me at 10 a.m. in the morning, and he said, Bernie, come down, I'm in the bar. See, he's like fairly, okay still. And he says, Bernie, have you ever had a brandy Alexander? I said, no, I've never had a brandy Alexander. He said, here, have a brandy Alexander. And he has a brandy Alexander. And then he says, 3 more. So we're sat there, 10 a.m. in the morning, 4 brandy Alexanders. He drinks his. I'm kind of like, I'm pacing myself. He's on number 3. And he just goes, oh, I feel sick, and literally falls off his chair. And I try to get up to leave, and they say, who's paying for the brandy Alexander? So I said, I thought he was. No, he's not.
I was first told that Ozzy's tour would end in a month, then 3 months, then 6 months. I didn't want to stay that long. I was pretty mentally cracked up at the time due to leaving Gillan and losing my friends in that band. The Gillan band members didn't speak to me for 2 years after I left. My marriage was also breaking up. All in all, I was in a bad state. I just wanted to calm down and get back to reality and play some music I enjoyed again. I didn't think that touring stadiums in the U.S. for 6 months would benefit my mental stability. And again, I had this situation where Sharon and him thought I was just playing hard to get. I was saying I have to go home in a month. I have this tour booked. And they were going, yeah. Ozzy, underneath his persona, is really insecure, so Sharon was protecting him by saying, Bernie really wants to do it, Ozzy. We'll finish the U.S. and Canada leg by the end of June. Right after that, we'll be in Japan for a couple of weeks. I'm sorry, Sharon, said Bernie, but when David Arden hired me, I was adamant about my availability. You see, I'm in the midst of recording my solo album. I even had to reschedule tour dates in order to be here. You'd rather be playing shitholes on your own than to be playing arenas with Ozzy? Sharon fired back. Sorry, Sharon, but that was my deal with David. Well, if that's what you want, then so be it. Bernie Torme was a British Strat cat, Tommy Aldridge said. Awesome guitar player and really, really cool, but the complete opposite of Randy. Randy was a really heavy Les Paul cat. I remember the show Bernie did at Madison Square Garden. I've never seen an organism as nervous. He had the weight of the world on his shoulders. You're going to be nervous if you're really well rehearsed. I really, really felt for him, but he soldiered on. He came up later and said, I just can't do this. He was really sweet to come in, but we got Brad Gillis in, and he was able to do the dates and do the tour with some aplomb, and honor as much as anyone can who Randy was. In a Holiday Inn, I went down for breakfast, Torme recalled, and this healthy-looking Californian had a guitar at the table, and he was stunning. He knew all the songs, and he had even seen Randy play. Brad said, I'm here because the label thinks you're going to fuck off. Don Airey was the only person who had any interest in auditioning anyone. So I said, Don, I want to go home. This guy is great. Give him an audition. I had already told Ozzy and Sharon that I was leaving, but that I'd hang on until they found a replacement. Then I discovered they were carrying a replacement, but they wouldn't audition him. When I had gone to their hotel suite to say I'm going to leave, Ozzy looked absolutely flummoxed. Sharon said, "It's because he wants to play a completely different type of music, Ozzy." It was protective and I understand it, so I just gawped and said, "Yeah." Don Airey said, "I went in a room with Brad and we started going through the set. After 2 songs, I was like, you know this, God bless you, man." He just knew everything, so we didn't have the agony of teaching someone Randy's guitar parts. Brad just slotted right in. It was his first real gig. He turned up somewhere like Baltimore. He paid his own fare and had $10 left in his pocket. He did such a great job, and he put everybody at rest. We were able to do the shows and carry on, but the sadness was just enormous. On how his audition came about, Brad Gillis said, "Night Ranger got together in 1980. We had written all these songs and decided to go into a pro studio and do some master demos and start shopping our demo to get a record deal. We were known as Ranger back then, but we had no following and we didn't want to play. I put together a band called the Alameda All-Stars, and I started playing all these different songs and a load of Ozzy songs. I remember in 1981 going to the Day on the Green and seeing Ozzy with Randy, and I was blown away. One night a friend of mine, Preston Thrall, came in. He said that he might be able to get me an audition with Ozzy. Preston's brother is Pat Thrall, and he had played with Pat Travers when Tommy Aldridge was the drummer. Long story short, Preston told Pat, Pat told Tommy, and Tommy told Sharon. When I got the call to join Ozzy, we were still shopping the Night Ranger demo in mid-1982.
So I get woken up by this female voice going, "Bradley? Bradley Gillis?" I'm going, "Yeah, hello. My name is Sharon Auden. I'm the manager wife of Ozzy Osbourne." I'm going, "Come on, who is this? Come on, it's too early." No, this is Sharon Auden. We'd like to fly you out to New York for an audition with Ozzy Osbourne Band." I said, "Come on, who is it?" I'm all hungover and groggy, you know. And she goes, "Let me put you on with Ozzy." And I hear this, "Hello, Bradley." "Who's this?" "This is Ozzy." I'm thinking, starting to wake up. I'm thinking, wow, is this really Ozzy? "I'd like to fly you out to New York for an audition with my band. You know, I'm going through a terrible trauma with the death of Randy, and I must move on." And I'm thinking, man, this couldn't be anybody else, you know? This is for real, you know? And he goes, "Would you like to fly out here?" And I said, "Sure." And so he says, "Get a pencil and I'll give you the set list of the songs to learn." So this is Sunday morning, and he wants to fly me out on Monday, and I'm thinking, oh great, I have a day to learn all the songs. And I said, "I don't know if I can learn all these songs in a day, you know, I know a few of them." He goes, "Don't worry, learn what you can. Then I'll get you out here and we'll go from there." Ozzy goes, "Come on, follow me." And the suite has like upstairs bedrooms to it. And I followed him upstairs with my guitar, and everyone's looking up like, "Good luck." And Ozzy shuts the bedroom door. He goes, "Sit down." So I sit down on the bed, and he sits on the floor with his legs crossed. He looks up and he goes, "What do you want to play for me?" And I said, "Well, I know Flying High Again." He goes, "Let's do it." So I just started playing. And he said, "Oh no, here we go." And he's like looking up, singing to me, and like I had no amplifier, so I was like, So I got to the solo, and I started doing all the tapping things for the solo, and played it all for him, and then went right back into the rhythm for the chorus out. He jumps up. I jump up. He gives me a big hug. He goes, "I love you. Pull me through. You're fucking great." Can I say that? I just did. "You're fucking great. I love you. Pull me through, Bradley." Okay. So, he opens the door to the suite and goes, "Ah!" Like this big scream, and walks downstairs, and like, that was good, I guess. "Ah!" And he walks down, and "Oh, we got a new guitar player."
You have to realize that after the sad death of Randy Rhoads, the band was going through a lot of emotional stress throughout the rest of the tour. So when I joined the band, it was quite a heavy situation. Bernie Torme was playing guitar at the time in the interim. When I flew to New York for the audition, I basically found out it was just me. So I did the best I could, practicing in my hotel room every day with a small amp, a boombox, and a live board cassette with Randy that had been recorded a few months earlier. At night, I would go to the shows to watch the live performance from the soundboard. I was amazed by the large castle, fire, explosives, and the hanging of the dwarf, realizing that in a few days, I was going to be up on stage. I'll never forget the sound man looking at me and laughing, saying, "You're next, buddy." On the 5th day, I let them know I was ready to go on stage with them. I'd never played with the band before. I did a 7-song sound check, and Ozzy didn't even show for the sound check. So the first time I actually played with Ozzy was the first night on stage. That was quite a heavy situation to be in before going out and playing in front of 8,000 people. On Brad Gillis, Ozzy commented, "Well, he's a different style guitar player on stage, but he plays all the licks. To get somebody as good as Randy, I've given up trying to look, because after the death of Randy, I was very bitter for a long while. And to anybody who came along and auditioned, I said, 'Go, I don't want to know.' I was trying to find the same kind of guitar player, and you can't. Randy was a one-off. Let's face it, you can't get anyone to beat Randy because he was the best. But Brad's near enough. I mean, you've got to give people a chance. It's a pretty big hole to fill in. I don't think many people could ever stand where Randy stood. And you've got to give anybody who tries to stand in credit for what they're doing." In his typical dysfunctional way, Ozzy had gone through the stages of grief out of sequence, Sarzo explained. It wasn't until a month after the crash that he began to enter his anger stage. At this point, Ozzy began drinking heavily again and started acting resentful towards Brad, and urged Sharon to continue looking for another guitar player. It was rather disturbing to watch Brad, who was doing a great job, being verbally abused by an inebriated Ozzy. By the end of April, Ozzy's drinking and hostility towards Gillis worsened. On May 2nd, Sharon suddenly put the tour on hold and sent the band back to Los Angeles to prevent Ozzy from having a complete meltdown. Once the band arrived in Los Angeles, Ozzy plunged into his longest binge and embarked on his quest to find the next guitar hero. One evening, Sarzo wrote, a friend picked Ozzy up and drove him to a rehearsal studio where he was introduced to a young local guitar player named Mark Torme. Before the young man played a single note, the friend made sure that Ozzy was in the right mood by pumping him with enough blow to stun a rhinoceros. "I can't bloody believe it. He's great. He's the next big thing," Ozzy yelled as he jumped around the room while Mark churned a flurry of guitar riffs and hammer-ons. "That's it. I want you to start rehearsing tomorrow with Rudy and Tommy," Ozzy told Mark, as the friend shoved more blow up Ozzy's nostrils. The next afternoon, Tommy and I went down to rehearse with Ozzy's latest discovery. Halfway into Crazy Train, Tommy and I looked at each other in total disbelief. "Damn, that's some new kind of information coming out of your guitar, boy," Tommy said in total frustration as he threw his drumsticks on the ground. "What do you mean?" Mark asked, confused. "For starters, it sounds like a freaking train wreck. You haven't played a right chord pattern or solo yet. Have you heard the record?" "Well, yeah," Mark replied. "And you can't tell what you're playing is in the wrong key?" "Well, it sounds fine to me," Mark said. Tommy and I just looked at each other and shook our heads. "We've got to call Sharon right now and nip this in the bud." The next morning, Ozzy resisted our advice. "Well, how about if we bring him on the road like we did with Brad and break him in during the sound check?" "Ozzy, you don't understand," Tommy insisted. "The kid can't tell whether he's playing in the right key or not. He just doesn't get it, and he might never get it." "Oh, bloody hell. Well, all right then. I'll call him and tell him he's not going to work out." After exhausting all possibilities in Los Angeles, Sharon and Ozzy flew to England to continue their search for the next big thing. Knowing how much Ozzy and Sharon loved and respected Randy, I don't think they were trying to replace him. More than likely, this was just another one of Ozzy's dysfunctional ways to deal with acceptance. I don't think he was looking to replace Randy. He was looking for Randy himself. At the suggestion from the members of our opening act, Magnum, Sharon and Ozzy auditioned a young guitar player by the name of John Sykes. His rock star image and guitar chops greatly impressed them during the auditions. But then once Ozzy and Sharon expressed their interest in John, his personal manager stepped in and made certain unrealistic demands. The terms did not sit well with Ozzy and Sharon, and they decided to continue their search. Another guitarist who was approached as a possible replacement for Gillis was Y&T main man Dave Meniketti, who said, "We were playing with AC/DC in 1982 on the For Those About to Rock tour. It was the last show on the UK tour, and Ozzy was waiting for us when we got off stage. He was there with Sharon, and he got down on his knees in front of me and said, 'Will you please join my band?' It was a cool thing, because it was Ozzy, and I would imagine he's pretty particular about who he has playing with him. But I kindly declined and said, 'I've got my own fish to fry here, but I appreciate the offer,' to which Ozzy insisted that I had to teach his guitarist, Brad Gillis, how to be a rock star. He said that Brad was too much of a square." Upon Sharon and Ozzy's return from England, Sarzo wrote, "We kicked off the next leg of our tour on May 20th with a performance in Hartford, Connecticut. The first thing I noticed was the change in Ozzy's attitude. He looked calm and focused. Also, it appeared that he had accepted carrying on with Brad, at least until the end of the tour." On September 19, 1982, the band and crew arrived in New York City to begin rehearsals for the 2 shows that would be recorded to comprise the Speak of the Devil album. Over the following days, Gillis, Sarzo, and Aldridge would rehearse in what Sarzo described as a gloomy Midtown Manhattan studio, while Osbourne himself was nowhere to be found. The band was given only 5 days to learn the songs, though in Aldridge's case, he was quite familiar with Black Sabbath's material after opening for the band countless times as a member of Black Oak, Arkansas in the 70s. As the band began rehearsing, Sharon arrived and informed them, "Now boys, don't expect to see much of Ozzy at rehearsals. He's not being very cooperative." As rehearsals continued without Ozzy, the band was still coming to terms with the loss of Rhodes, and morale was very low. The band members resented the fact that they were rehearsing for an Ozzy Osbourne album, while Osbourne himself could not be bothered to even show up. It was during this period that Sarzo, who was already recording the Mental Health sessions in secret with Quiet Riot, made his final decision to leave Osbourne's band. On the day of the first show, on September 26, 1982, during soundcheck, Ozzy finally showed up. After experiencing some difficulty remembering the lyrics to many of the songs, Ozzy placed a folding chair with a desk lamp on top of it at center stage and placed a notebook with handwritten lyrics to the songs on the chair. Throughout the shows, he often stood by this chair singing as he read the lyrics from the notebook. The record plant's mobile recording studio was parked in an alley behind the Ritz to capture the performances on tape. The band members dressed down, not wearing their usual stage clothes, with Osbourne himself sporting sweatpants and a bald head after drunkenly shaving off his familiar long hair a few days prior. Recording engineer Max Norman said, "Since Ozzy was on a limited budget, they could only do this one time. So I made Ozzy play a whole show in the afternoon with no audience, and I recorded that. That way, if something happened on the night or something's not good, at least we'll have a choice, and we'll have more material to draw from." Ozzy had Brad Gillis, of course a great guitar player. Brad, I think, learned all those songs in about 2 nights. Rudy Sarzo was not a particularly accomplished bass player, I'm afraid. I like Tommy Aldridge. He's a great drummer. The show was pretty good. Out of the whole thing, I think we took about 5 tracks from the afternoon. And then I was faced with the fact that there wasn't any audience there. So I had to add audience, and I had to kind of adopt the ambience of the hall to make sure it matched up with the other stuff. It was a very low-budget thing. And then the other part of the story was Ozzy wasn't happy with the vocals, so we went to the record plant. When he came in to redo the vocals, he was listening to Rudy's bass, and Ozzy said, "Rudy's bass is fucked. He should come in and redo it." I said, "Don't worry about it. I'll just turn it down." So it's sort of a Metallica mix. It has some truthfulness. There's no second or third takes, really. It's what they did, and that's it. We were at the record plant for 4 days. Ozzy would come in, redo the vocals, mix it, send it over to the cutting engineer. And then the next day he came in to do the second side. Ozzy'd redo the vocals, mix it, send it over to the cutting engineer. So in 4 days we did the whole 4 sides. After completing the shows, the band minus Osbourne flew back to Los Angeles on September 28th. While on the flight, Gillis played the rest of the group the demo recordings he had made with Night Ranger that would comprise the band's soon-to-be-released debut album, while Sarzo played the new Quiet Riot recordings he had been working on in secret. Upon arriving in Los Angeles, Sarzo quit Osbourne's band and officially rejoined Quiet Riot, prompting a long and bitter feud with Osbourne that eventually resulted in the singer assaulting the bassist. Hello, Sharon? Hi, Rudy. Is everything all right? Well, I don't know how to put this, but I've joined Quiet Riot. The uncomfortable silence on the other end felt like an eternity, Sarzo wrote. The album doesn't come out until March, so if you want me to do the UK dates, I will be available. Forget it. Nobody leaves Ozzy. I left Ozzy after Rudy Sarzo left to join Quiet Riot, Gillis said. The situation coming down was very uncomfortable for Rudy. They brought in Pete Way to play bass, and we finished the last leg in Europe. Things just didn't feel right anymore.
So anyway, I toured for 8 months, and it was great to do. It was quite an experience, but I just felt my heart was back in Night Ranger, you know. I grew up with these guys, you know, spent a few years with them trying to get a deal, and all of a sudden I just bail on them. Plus with Ozzy, I was a side man, you know, and Ozzy was the band, and everybody else was a side man, and I kind of didn't like that. So I put in a notice. I said, hey, I'm leaving the band, and Ozzy was cool, you know. I was always up front with him. And I took a chance and went back with Night Ranger, went and did the album and released it, and boom, got a hit, you know. Don't Tell Me You Love Me.
A tour to support the Speak of the Devil album was scheduled for December 1982 to April 1983. On joining Ozzy's band, UFO bassist Pete Way said, Ozzy needed someone to step in quickly to replace Rudy Sarzo, who had just gone back to his old band Quiet Riot. Ozzy offered me £5,000 a week, plus daily expenses, and as much fun as you could possibly have. Every day in Ozzy's company was an adventure, and I was always numb enough to be able to handle whatever it was that might happen. There were no limitations whatsoever with regard to what Ozzy was capable of doing. On the one hand, the two of us would have very in-depth conversations about our families and personal lives. On the other, he would turn to me conspiratorially and say, Pete, what we need is some waffle dust. Waffle dust was how Ozzy referred to cocaine. I think he saw me as a kindred spirit, and we spent an awful lot of our time together boozing or else looking for waffle dust. Ozzy performed 7 concerts in Europe in December of 1982, after which Way and Gillis left the band and were soon replaced by bassist Don Costa and guitarist Jakey Lee. When Lee was asked, when you joined Ozzy during the Speak of the Devil tour, what was the state of the band at that point? The guitarist said, well, there was Tommy Aldridge on drums, Don Costa on bass, Lindsey Bridgewater on keyboards, and Ozzy Osbourne on drugs and alcohol, basically. At the time I was in the band, I can at least proudly say I'm pretty sure that was Ozzy Osbourne at his most fucked up. Back then, it didn't feel like a proud thing to say, but now it's kind of like a badge of honor.